Welcome to another episode of the Core Podcast. This episode is with Lisa, and I have to say it was an absolute delight to talk to Lisa. We are total strangers. We haven't really connected. It's always been online, but this has to be such a vulnerable, open conversation. She shares so much of us and the importance of security, diversity, well-being. I think this lady has so much to offer to the industry, and if at any point you've got imposter syndrome, burnout, not knowing how to recruit or hire or where to go, Lisa gives us so much insight. And yes, she's got an MBE and she still thinks she's got imposter syndrome. Hi Lisa, thank you so much for joining us at the Core Podcast. For our audience that's listening today, would you be able to tell them a little bit more about yourself and how you've landed in the cybersecurity world?
Absolutely. So my name's Lisa, and I am the founder of Cybersecurity Unity, which is a global community organization that I set up to try to go some small way of uniting the cybersecurity industry, not just in the UK, but on a global basis, to really foster that greater collaboration, to stop a lot of the siloed working that we often see in cybersecurity. And really just to have that global community, that information sharing aspect. I got into cybersecurity, back in 2009, and I transitioned into cyber from the entertainment industry because prior to getting into cyber, I was working with Chris Tarrant of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire fame. I did that for many years. Yes, I do indeed.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So this is going to take a curveball. Right. So, I do ask this people. My question is like childhood Lisa. What did childhood Lisa want to do? What was your journey into a career? So can you explain to me, like, what did childhood Lisa want to do? How did she end up with Chris Tarrant, and where did cybersecurity
Absolutely. So childhood Lisa wanted to do nothing else except write.
Okay.
I was always happy whenever I just had pen to paper. Didn't really bother with toys or dolls or anything like that, but Scalextrics, then you were talking. I love my little cars. But no, I just wanted to write. And you know, the joke sort of goes that I wasn't bothered with my toys at all. I just was happy as long as I had a pen and paper and I was writing and so on. So my original career choice was that I wanted to go into journalism.
Okay.
But I'm going to show my age a little bit now, because when I finished studying and looked to where to go into journalism, it was around about the mid-90s, and email wasn't really that. It was just starting to get mainstream, but it wasn't really sort of there yet at that point. And it meant making a move to London if I wanted to go into magazine journalism, which is what I wanted to do. And I just couldn't live in London for all the money in the world. I don't mind going to London, but coming out of London, it just wasn't for me. So I kind of, in a roundabout way, that's how I ended up working with Chris Tarrant, because I also got involved in doing things like I helped to ghostwrite one of his books at the time, which was called Tarrant Off the Record. Okay. I did a lot of his PR stuff, so I would liaise a lot with with publications for the national press and so on. And I also got involved in a lot of his contract negotiations. So I did his Capital Radio contract, his contract for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and so on. And I did that working with Chris quite closely for 7 years at his management company, so quite a long time. And then I transitioned into cyber because my ex-wife was very high up as a penetration tester, and she did a lot of government work, so for the MOD, for Kinetic, and lots of organizations like that. And I was really fascinated by the psychology around hacking and cyber psychology and so on. But there was a lot that she couldn't tell me about because she was bound by the official Secrets Act. But in her spare time, she came up with a software testing tool that helped her do her day job as a penetration tester a lot quicker. So the tool is called Nipper Studio, and it scans routers, networks, and firewalls, and it looks at the configuration files within various different devices and produces a detailed report of any vulnerabilities found. When she transitioned the tool from open source to a more commercial product, it went like absolute wildfire. And she was struggling a bit in terms of just trying to keep her workload going as a penetration tester and everything else that was going on. So I joined, and we founded the company from this very room, in fact, at the time, and grew it from just the two of us to a team of members of staff, offices in the centre of Worcester. So I really got involved in a lot of the positioning of it. Pretty much anything that needed doing, I got on and did, so that she could continue to sit and code, because that's what she loved doing. And I was also involved in the first cyber cluster in the UK, which at the time was the Malvern cybersecurity cluster. See,
Okay.
there's a lot more cyber clusters
Yeah,
now under UK C3, but Malvern under Dr. Emma Philpott MBE was the first one.
I
And
didn't realise.
I also did a lot of work as well with the cybersecurity strategy for Worcestershire, where I live, in conjunction with Worcestershire County Council. When my ex and I separated and subsequently divorced, I knew that I wanted to stay within cybersecurity. So I then went on to do a lot of work with BT on their Assure Cyber product. I then got more into the cybersecurity awareness training side of things. And I've worked with a lot of organisations designing different programs for cyber awareness over the years. I also then founded the UK Cybersecurity Association, which is now rebranded and is now Cybersecurity Unity. So I made it much more of a community membership organisation as opposed to more of a trade body. I speak at events. I often get asked to write for different publications on different aspects of cybersecurity, neurodiversity, imposter syndrome, supporting women in cyber. Gosh, I could go on after
You do it all.
I
You make
did.
me tired. I mean, that is phenomenal. And what a beautiful story of showing that you literally don't have to have any background in cybersecurity to enter in this. I think the one thing I've really enjoyed doing this podcast and speaking to so many people is that people haven't had a natural straight path into cybersecurity. I think it will change with the next generation, but for all of us, it was something like a phenomenal that came around. We either accidentally fell into it or went in that way. So it's incredible, and your journey is incredible. To think that you were looking to do journalism and now look at you. That's incredible. What a lot to digest. There's a lot of topics we can talk about, but okay, so that's fantastic. So I thought one of the things we were going to talk about was generation AI and cybersecurity. So in your opinion, if you were going to give a definition and a brief of what generation AI is, what is that in your opinion, and how do you think that's evolving and impacting cybersecurity?
Absolutely. So a lot of the generative AI tools are things like, ChatGPT, Bard, Claude, all of those kind of tools. And I think it's fair to say ChatGPT really just exploded onto the mainstream around about late sort of 2022. And then last year we started to see a lot more in terms of AI tools and AI being implemented into a lot of different other products and so on. And you get things like Midjourney, the image creation tools, and so on. But for me, around security and generative AI, some of the more traditional advice that I and a lot of others would tend to give around the cyber awareness piece is to look at phishing emails, or look at emails and look at their spelling, look at how they're written, look at their grammar, things like that. And you will often spot a lot of inconsistencies in there, which will give you that bit of a red flag to think, yeah, that actually could be a phishing email. Don't do anything with that. But I think the use now of ChatGPT and some of these tools is making phishing emails a bit harder to spot, because cyber criminals will often be using these tools to craft their emails.
Yeah.
And if you're busy, or you just sort of skimming something and it looks okay on the surface, you could very, very easily be tricked into clicking on that link, and then by then it could be too late. So that is certainly something that I've seen with generative AI, is the nature of phishing emails are getting a lot better in terms of that spelling and grammar side, and harder to spot if they're using ChatGPT and similar to craft those phishing emails. But there's also things like inherent biases and so on that AI has. So I would always say as well, be really mindful about that information and those biases that AI will often throw out in the content that it generates. But what I often say as well is that it's only putting out what we've put in. So I always say it's sort of bias in, bias out, and AI is inherited are inherent conscious and unconscious biases, and I'd see that quite a bit in a lot of the content that comes out.
And like you said, it's what we put in. I've discussed this a little bit today, of going over AI with some of our other guests. How is there a way of us being able to control bias? Because obviously, ultimately, I interviewed someone recently, and they were saying about how recruitment agency was scanning in the strongest CVs that they received for certain roles, so that AI could then go through the applicants. And I don't think they meant to, but the strongest ones they put through were all male.
Yeah.
So AI then learned, okay, so your opinion, the strongest candidates are male. And that isn't actually what they were saying. They just put the strongest ones in, and it was just a default that they actually ended up being men. In a world where human has an input into AI and can create the bias, is that a bit of a danger? Can we control that? Like, is that controllable? Because I think, are we naturally biased?
I think for me, I would never use that kind of AI to scan CVs or scan personal information or upload anything that could be identifiable
Okay.
in any way. But I think the genie is out of the box a bit, so to speak. And I think a lot of these programs have already inherited and already been trained on exactly scenarios that you've just said. So I think it's just being mindful of that whenever you're using it, and just being a bit clear on those biases, and being able to spot them, and not relying sort of too much on the information that AI puts out.
It's getting you off the blank piece of paper, but it's not necessarily
Yeah.
accurate. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I think a lot of people I've spoken to about AI is that it's speeding up processes and things that we could probably do ourselves, but ultimately we've still got to be in control of the narrative and what it's
Absolutely.
putting out there. So you've mentioned phishing, and you've mentioned how AI is going to improve it. I mean, I
Yeah.
remember younger, it used to be that, I don't know, a family member was abroad and they don't have their credit card, or there's a prince of something and you're about to inherit a hell of a lot of money. I mean, it's changed so much, and like over
Yeah.
time, even the ones that we receive here, I get some very sophisticated ones that they seem to even pick up when like I'm on a school run. So they always seem to come through when it's aware that I'm not on my laptop, that I'm on my phone. So being able to check the source of it properly or not skim read it, I've quite a few have always come through at that kind of prime time, and I've picked that up. For that sophistication, how do you think we can improve awareness and educating individuals to protect themselves more?
So I can actually give a really specific example of something that happened to me
Mhm.
quite recently, within the last couple of weeks. So I was in the process of getting a new car, and with that, insurance obviously needed to be changed, tax needed to be sorted out, and a few other things. And I'd gone onto the gov.uk website, and I'd gone through the whole process of taxing the new car.
Mm.
I'm not joking when I say within a minute, 2 minutes of that happening, and I got the confirmation email and everything. I also then got another email that pertained to be from gov.uk, and it actually read about your car is not taxed and is therefore not legal. You need to click on this link to put your tax. And that came literally within 2 minutes of me
Yeah,
actually taxing my car. Now, if I hadn't been that quite sort of switched on or astute about it, I could have easily have clicked on that. I mean, I didn't, but I could have quite easily have clicked on that link, thinking it was to do with the fact I'd just not 2 minutes before come off the
makes sense.
gov.uk website to tax my car. Um, so I can easily see why people can just click on things. We're really busy. We're skimming something. And if it does pertain to something that we've just done, like I had with the taxing of the car, it's really easy just to click on something and then get caught out. So I think just as much awareness of all the different ways that they will try to target you as possible. The bank of mum and dad one on WhatsApp is another classic example. I don't have children, but I've had that text on numerous occasions. And it just makes me laugh because I just think, I don't even have children, but you're trying to target me by saying, Mum, I've lost my phone. Can you send me some money? And all this kind of, this kind of thing. So I just think as much awareness as possible. And I'm going to be working on a campaign called Generation Cyber soon, which is all around we are all Generation Cyber. We all have our part to play, and we're all targets in some way for cyber criminals. And that campaign is going to be very much around looking at all these different ways that hackers will target individuals, and things like the WhatsApp scams, the phishing emails, and so on. So that's a campaign I'm really looking forward to working on soon.
You say generation. I mean, as a child, I remember bringing Stranger Danger. There was a thing that we all got taught in assembly about people asking to do portraits of us. And not to get in the car and not to take sweets and stuff. And it's such a default. I think any certain age group will just say stranger danger or roll off their tongue, not to take sweets, etc. That. Do you think the same emphasis needs to start being made about cyber and phishing and protection, and people aren't all who you think they are on the internet from such a young age? So it's just a default. So our default setting is to assume maybe that link isn't safe, and that might not necessarily have come from who you think. Do you think there's something in that I think we trust, inherently we trust, and we're very trusting of an authoritative thing. So I know there was a big thing about COVID, wasn't it, where texts were fake and things like that. And HMRC, anything like that, you owe tax or etc. We're very trusting, and I'd like to think as we should be as human beings in some sense. So do you think it's something that has to, from a same generation, start from that early learning so it becomes more of a default?
Absolutely, and I think it should be built in at school from a very young age and right through the education system. But I don't see that there's some schools that do that and do that quite well, but there are a lot of others that don't. And I would love to see that sort of mainstream, across the board. You mentioned yourself, Kelly, about the stranger danger. I'm of a certain age that I can remember all the government public information films back in the 1970s, and they put the fear of God into me of, don't talk to a stranger, don't do it, don't do that. And I think we've just started. The NCSC has just put out a campaign around staying safe online, but I'd really like to see a lot more sort of hard hitting stuff, because I think it's one of those things that until it happens to you, you don't realise the impact that it'll have or how much of a target that you'll be. And I also, even now, we're in 2024, and I still talk to a lot of sole traders and small businesses, and they all will say to me, "We're too small. We're not going to be, a hacker's not going to bother with us. We don't need to worry about our cybersecurity and so on." And I just despair, because I think, well, what about your supply chains, and so on? Because
Who do
if
you
something
tell to? Who
goes
you
up,
connected to?
yeah, absolutely. So I think there's still a long way to go, but I really believe that unless it's something that you've had first-hand experience of, or something that's happened to you, that's why it's just not hitting home. So I always try to use as many real-world examples within the training that I provide for that reason.
That makes sense, because it is difficult to make something tangible. Like even for the big businesses and the high up C-suites, I think the CISOs of the world have the same issues, the same trying to talk to small businesses, the same empathy, understanding. Oh, it's not going to impact me. What's the chances of this happening? It seems a little bit, I don't know, James Bondy or movie, and until it actually happens to someone, then they're like, oh, okay. And like you said about the silos thing, I don't know about you, but I've only been in the industry for nearly 10 years now, but I didn't feel like people talked about it openly. That I don't think I could have done a podcast probably 5 years ago, because when someone was hacked, it was kind of like a dirty secret. It wasn't discussed. I do think what is nice about the industry now is that people are being a bit more open, probably been forced because people have to declare it, but people are being a bit more open because that community that you're trying to build allows people to learn from people's mistakes potentially, or see things coming, or do something differently.
Absolutely. And I think as well, there's a lot less in terms of I guess the threat around, oh, am I going to lose my job if I've clicked on something or I've done something, inadvertently or so. So I think as well, removing a lot of that in organizations and having that policy of being able to, speak up without fear or
Yeah.
ramifications, because it's just so easily done, a
Yeah.
lot of the time.
I did a great talk with a guy called Charlie, part of connected to the police and what they do there. And he said he found it still fascinated him that if someone had been a rape victim or assaulted, you would take them under your wing, you'd protect them, you would give them all the support, therapy, ease them back into work, all those sort of things, mindful that they've been violated. However, we don't do the same when it's a digital thing. And he said that when the phishing attacks now are so sophisticated, and they might have studied you, gone through your Facebook, made you think that they're connected to you through school or your kids or anything, or you maybe even got your line of trust, that you feel stupid and duped and tricked. And and he said that that's a violation to someone, that that has an impact on their mental health. And yet what currently, and I don't know, you might disagree on this, what we do is kind of put an email around that this has happened, and put people on training on don't make the silly mistake again. And he was like, I'm not sure you would do that to a rape victim. So why do we do it to someone that's done a phishing attack? I don't know if you kind of feel the same about that.
No, I agree, Kelly, and I think that's why I use a lot of the real world examples within within the training that I do, that really will hit home with audiences, because like you say, it is that sort of feeling of, oh, I can't believe I was so stupid to to do that or click on that or so on. And you're right, yeah, we wouldn't say that to somebody that had been of rape or anything else. So why were we doing it within cybersecurity? I don't think it's fair.
No, and I did a podcast probably a year ago now about someone who was looking into the safety of people on the metaverse, because she was saying that's going to become a new area where people are violated. But she was like, how do you police that when it's not a real thing? And I was like, oh gosh, that's an even bigger minefield. You do a lot in the cyber skills and training
Mm,
and awareness.
mm,
Do you still, we have talked about it, I think it's a trend that's not really gone, about how we're not recruiting fast enough, there's a gap,
mhm.
we're not attracting more talent. Obviously you're involved in this closer to it than I am. Do you still feel like the gap's still there, and do we still have a problem with attracting talent?
Yeah, I do think the gap is still there, and a lot of the key studies, and particularly the last government studies, show that there is still a gap in recruiting people into the cybersecurity industry. And that's why I do a lot of work as well in terms of getting more women into the cybersecurity space, and those that are neurodivergent into careers into cybersecurity, because again, a lot of studies show that those that are neurodivergent are really well suited to careers in cybersecurity. And full disclosure, I myself was diagnosed with autism in 2018 and ADHD in addition to that in 2023, last year. And getting that diagnosis really, both of them really made such sense to me. It's like, oh, that's why I do that. And that's why I enjoy that. And that's why I do that. So that really helped in terms of understanding, me and why I've thrived in cybersecurity so much. So that's why I do a lot in terms of trying to raise as much interest as possible about cybersecurity being a really cool place to to be, because it to me it absolutely is, and I live and breathe it. But I will say as well, some of the feedback that I've had is that cybersecurity is a little bit unwelcoming and off-putting, and it's because of the imagery. Believe it or not, I've had some people say to me that they feel the imagery is very dark, that it's always, the script kiddies huddled over the laptops, sort of, doing this on their keyboards. It's a lot of padlocks, which gives it a very much sort of, keep out, and outsiders can't come in. In terms of that imagery. So again, I've written a lot about that, and I'm not sure how, but that needs to change, I think. And so and blue as well. If you notice, the default color is blue.
I said this on
Um,
the podcast earlier. So I went to my first InfoSec probably maybe 10, 12 years ago. And I, from a marketing background, right? So I'm not a security background, and I'd been in other industries, and I was with our CEO, James. So it must have been 10, 8 years ago. And I've been with other people, but with him. And I remember he was like, "Why have you got a face like that?" And I was like, "I just don't understand." And he was like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "Well, everyone's blue. Is there like something in a contract that if you're in cybersecurity or in tech, it has to be blue?" And he was like, "No, but it's serious. It's a serious topic, Kelly. So it needs to be blue." I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "Why has everyone got a padlock?" And he was like, "Well, the same reason." And I was like, "Okay. Why are all their strap lines the same? Because they all do the same thing?" And he was like, "No, they all do completely different things." And I was like, but it all looks the same to me, and it all looks the same to me." And when I started at Quarter Cloud, everything for me was, "But why? But why are we doing it like that? But why is it blue? But why has it got a padlock? Why has a guy got a hoodie on? Does everyone have a hoodie on that's hacking?" And they're like, "Well, no, but everyone understands that." And I was like, "But I don't understand that." And I just remember like constantly. So it's so interesting that you said the same, because I came on and I got a bit of pushback when I started, because it was like, "No, this is how it's done. This is why it's always been done." And our branding's got bright, it's got pink in it. Because I was like, why has it got to be blue? Why has it got to be blue at all? So it's interesting that you felt the same, and I felt it. I felt like I couldn't connect to these businesses. I didn't understand the padlocks. It was a lot of silhouettes of people with no faces. It was, yeah,
yeah,
we didn't put a person to it or a human to it. That is changing. I'm seeing a lot of people putting people
yeah,
part of it. But when I
yeah.
started, yeah, I completely agree with you, and I can see why. Because from marketing, I remember when I started, a lot of my friends were like, "Oh God, what a dry, boring subject. Like, ooh, do you really want to go into that?" And I actually think it's incredibly James Bond. It's actually a
Yeah.
kick-ass, cool, interesting subject.
Yeah, and I can see why, some people might be put off by all that with you, because it does give off that sort of, cheap out, approach, when it's really not the case, at all. And I think it is getting a bit better. There are more women coming into the space,
Yeah.
now. Still not enough, but progress is being made. So it is heartening to see a lot of that. But there are still some things I spot from time to time that I just think, oh, really? So back in, and it was 2019 when I went, the last InfoSec I went to before the pandemic hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember on the Wednesday, there'd been a Women in Cyber sort of breakfast sort of thing with a talk from Professor Sue Black, who led Bletchley Parkinson. And when that finished, I came out and I started to have a look around some of the exhibition stands. And at the same time, I noticed a couple of trolleys full of beer and whatever being pushed along. And I just thought, oh, perhaps they're for happy hours later or something. Anyway, I came round and went across the stands and I thought, they're handing beers out. And I looked again and I thought, they're handing the beers out to the men to draw them into the stand. Now, not that I wanted a beer at 10 o'clock in the morning, because I guarantee I didn't, but I made a deliberate point of walking really close by these stands and close by to the people that were handing the beers out. Not once was I offered a beer, but all the men were.
Um,
When I came back from InfoSec, I wrote about it and I posted about it on social media, and I called it hashtag beer bias. And now, as a result, InfoSec don't actually allow the drinks to be served on any of the stands in the exhibition until the happy hours, sort of later in the day. They don't allow that now, in the mornings.
a lot has changed. I mean,
Yeah,
when I started, there was some interesting ways of drawing people to a stand
yeah,
that weren't necessarily cyber. I mean, that was very cleverly done.
absolutely.
And people were hired in that definitely weren't
Yeah,
from. Yeah, there was. I mean, it's definitely evolved. The industry has definitely evolved. I think both of us have probably seen that change. There's some incredible women in it, and I mean, I've interviewed women on. We did a lot before International Women's Day of some of them having to downplay the way they looked and not wear as much makeup because people wouldn't take them seriously, or that they shouldn't look that way and things like that. And it's just like, oh, how could, and things have been said, and that's very sad, really, because like we were saying, ultimately, and I believe cybersecurity is pretty cool. We're all trying to protect and do the right thing. And everyone's experience, and this isn't women and men, this is everyone's experience of tackling a problem is different. And this is a problem that we need different people's opinions, ideas. A story that I got told from one of the podcasts was I think they were doing something with engineering for the trains, and they couldn't get the timing right. And they were all male engineers. In the end, they brought a female engineer in, and she apparently sat back for like 5 minutes and was like, yeah, you're getting the timing wrong because you're not thinking about people getting on the train. So they've got the system so right and so fast, but they couldn't realize why the trains weren't coming in on time. And it was like, well, you'd forgotten about the loading time. You'd forgotten about people getting on and sitting on the train. And it wasn't anything rocket science. It was just someone that went, well, okay, but you've not looked at it this way. And, and I've had interesting stories about NASA, and apparently they sent the first woman up to space with 100 tampons for 3 weeks. I mean, like, it's just like people's not understanding of a situation, like different experiences just bring something completely different to it. And I think that's so important. And I'm a huge thing about the gender side, and everyone will know about from the podcast of how important I think it is, but also the neurodiversity. Interesting you saying about your autism and ADHD. Like, I'm currently going through the process of that for myself with ADHD, which has been a bit of a light bulb moment. I had got diagnosed with dyslexia and dyscalculia when I was 21. And weirdly, I didn't find that a light bulb moment. I found that I don't know, like I found that more that I wasn't the same as everyone else. And I'd worked so hard to be at uni and stuff like that. I don't know. It was a bit like, maybe this is a whole imposter syndrome feel. Like I felt like I'd covered it up for so long. So for someone to come to me at 21, like going, oh, hang on, we've gotten onto you. And then being told, oh, because I got given someone to come into my lectures with me to record it. And I know it's all those support mechanisms, but I felt like it made me stand out from my peers, and I just wanted to fit in. I just wanted to do well at uni. I didn't want any exceptions. I didn't want that. And I felt like it made, I don't know, I just felt like it put like a spotlight on me in my last year at uni. Like I didn't get to do my exams with my friends. I had to go in a different room, all these sorts of things. Where the ADHD thing has been a bit of a light bulb moment of some of my quirks. Other people have them too. So that's nice. That doesn't feel so lonely. Where the dyslexia, dyscalculia thing felt lonely at the time, this has been like, I feel like I've been finding my tribe. And interestingly, there seems to be a lot of us in cybersecurity, which has been incredible. Why do you think, because I'm seeing it as my superpower, my husband seems to think that, it's not so great because I can't get laundry done, but we're working through that.
But you and me both. Oh my goodness, that is exactly the same. My husband says the same thing. It's like, you can do all this stuff during the day. Why can't you remember to turn the lights off? Why can't you remember to sort the washing machine out? Why can't you remember to do the dishwasher?
He follows me around like, why are your keys here and your car there and your handbag's there? And then he came into bed last night and was like, I don't know why you want to kill me, but you left your trainers on the bottom of the stairs. Like, did you just not get to the hall? And I was like, I don't know. I don't even know where I took them off. I was like, I'm really sorry. I didn't do it on purpose. He was like, was it a long day? I was like, yeah, it was a really long day. He was like, cool. I'm going to go watch the football. Is there anything else you've left on the stairs that I might trip on? And I was like, I don't know. Just be really careful. There could be stuff anywhere. And we're in the middle of a renovation. So it's like also very dangerous with me because I'm like, oh, what's this? And power tool that I've taken off somewhere to hide from the kids, but put in a very unsafe place. So, but it's been a bit of a light bulb moment because like, obviously it's been a frustration for us of like, why can't I do a job which I believe quite well, and juggle loads and loads of plates. And then when it comes to home life or getting a job done, or have you updated insurance, or have you contacted the bank? And I'm like, oh God, I forgot. Yeah. Oh, so you.
I feel seen. I feel seen right now. You've just described me to an absolute T, and it's the bane of my husband's life. He really he's better now. And he put in a lot of smart home automations. That's been my saving grace. So
home
he's So he's done. He coded and created a dashboard so that it's got things like and he's done these smart plugs and then routines through Alexa and so on. So that things. So for example, if I forget the washing machine, it'll just automatically turn itself off. If and lights can come on. Also, we've got motion sensors so that lights will come on and off, and I don't have to worry about them and things like that. Same with the dishwasher. I just press a button for the dishwasher. I can also see all our solar energy and look at all that as well. And the smart home automations that have been fantastic for us. I call them marriage savers,
Yeah.
literally.
I mean, I don't know what it is. I mean, like, thank God GHDs turn themselves off now. That's all I'm saying. But it's like even the door, the amount of times I've driven to work and gone, don't think I've locked the front door. And I've driven all the way back and I have done it. I think there's the odd occasion I haven't. But the amount of times I get to work and I'm like, I'm not sure I've locked it. Not. And and lucky now we've got the Ring doorbell so I can go back and watch myself to see if I've done it. But I literally thought, I mean, up until now, when someone's saying to me about 10 months ago, you sure you've not got ADHD? That I was like, oh, I just thought I thought it was a loom button. About a year ago, I thought I was going absolute mad because the more busy I've got at work, the home stuff was getting worse. And it's like my
Same.
energy, the energy of my brain at work when I got home, like I had nothing to plug in. So the mistakes and the little things. I don't know why I can't leave on time for anything. The earlier I get up, that doesn't seem to help anymore either. I still leave it to the last minute. I don't know why. I don't know what's about any of that.
There is a thing called time blindness because I'm the same with that, and I have to set numerous. So I even had to set an alarm for this, so I didn't forget and get sort of zoned into work. That I didn't forget that at 2 o'clock I've got to do this, but I set it 15 minutes before so I could just set up and check everything and so on. So I live by alarms, and I have to hear the alarms. It's no good them just or a thing coming up on the screen because I'll just click it off and I'll ignore it. I have to set actual sound alarms on my phone, and they're going constantly throughout the day to remind me, oh, I've got a call now, oh, I've got that to do now, and so on.
So we're not shining a great light of what the things that make us tick, but why do you think in a work environment, actually, some of our quirks, I mean, I believe my hyper focus, I can juggle
Exactly that.
101 things at once. I do believe I'm a good
Yeah.
problem solver. I actually, if an emergency happens, I'm down because I can do anything in panic mode pretty well because that's my default. What do you think we're missing out by not opening that? And also, I've had a conversation with before, and I don't know how you feel about this, about how we recruit people into the work, because some people with different neurodiversity spectrums, interviewing like this could be very incredibly hard. Phone calls might not work for them. I don't know. What were your thoughts on that,
Yeah.
of embracing people into it and how we can do that?
I think it's more about the realization that there's no one size fits all, and a solution that works for me may not work for you and may not work for somebody else. So, again, one of the things I'm looking at doing is trying to get organizations on board with having something, and this is across the board with everyone,
Yep.
not just those who are neurodivergent, but my idea is to enable everyone to have their what I call their workplace needs, almost like a little manifesto or a list of, hi, this is Lisa, and these are the things that I need to do my job effectively and be the best that I can be and give as much value to the organization. And if I can have, these adjustments of these things, to help me, I could be, achieving absolutely fantastic things and a lot quicker as well, and being able to, hit the ground running that much more, quickly. So just taking me as an example, it's just things like allowing just a little bit of downtime in between calls, just so I can decompress, and so
I'm
so
just
not having back to back to back to back,
That's
calls.
the story of me. And because I'm always 5 minutes
Yeah.
late to each one, it's an impact of every single one all day.
Yeah.
Because I'm always that, the next one's then 15 minutes late and the next one's 20 minutes late just because I start off
Yeah.
5 minutes or, don't make the first. No, I completely get that. Or even just remembering
And
to do break in.
that's it. And another thing for me is I'm better with things sort of written. So I could be on a call and there could be some instructions or tasks or things that are said, But I always like to try and record those calls so I can refer back, and I have to write down the actions, because if I don't, I
I
might miss
I
an action
understand
or
that.
something.
I always feel like I'm a bit rude because if I'm on a call, I'm having to type at the same time. I have to
Yeah,
write the actions or have the email open as
yeah.
it's happening, so I'm doing the actions. Otherwise, I could come back to it the next day and be like, "Oh God, I know you said something." Yeah, no, I completely empathize with that one. Like if I'm not doing it in real time and trying to get into it, I can get myself a bit lost into what my actions are. So that makes sense.
And then even when it comes to recruitment, if you're conducting your videos, your interviews, sorry, over video calls, so Zoom, Teams, etc. One of the things that I saw this a few months ago, I thought, God, this is such a simple thing, but it could be such a game changer.
Mm.
If you're conducting your interviews on a video call like this, pop each question in the chat as you're going along,
Hmm.
so that not only are you getting that question said to you, you've got it there in writing in front of you. So there's less chance of you mishearing it, not understanding the question, not understanding what the requirements or are. And I just thought, what a game changer. It's so simple. You've got the chat on Teams, on Google Meet, on Zoom, just to put those questions in. That really could be a game changer to a lot of people.
And sometimes the ability to allow them to read it allows them to breathe. I know
Yeah,
with me, my bad default is that I've tried to finish people's sentences or think I can finish someone's sentence because my brain's going it's going too fast. So actually the mm, talking to me and then saying, "Oh, if you've seen, it's in the chat if you want to reread it," allows that person to breathe, take a step before they rush into an answer. Um, because I just feel like with me, I'm always like wanting to show so much so quick, or I know the answer, la la la, and actually can be to my deficit because then I over chat or go off tangent and things like that. So I think, yeah, for different reasons, making sure that they can understand it, but it's also giving them a pace to the
yeah,
interview, for you to be able to
absolutely.
go through that. Obviously, tech is, and actually, I think all industries, I think actually the more switched on we are, the more connected we are, the Slack to the Teams, to the WhatsApp, to the Signal, to the email messaging, to LinkedIn, so many ways of getting hold of. We even had this conversation with me today of I'm not keeping on top of emails. Do we have to put something in my email signature saying I respond on these times? And if it's urgent, ring
Mhm.
me because I'm getting to an email like 4 days later and deadline's passed of what they
Yeah,
wanted from me. Um, we know in cyber burnout's pretty high.
yeah,
I think it's actually higher in women slightly, but definitely anyone with high up job is always on. Obviously, we're tackling problems. It's quite a serious topic. Um, do you think we are acknowledging the burnout in industry? Um, and do you think we're tackling it well? And do you think there is an effective way to manage stress? And whether that's in tech or across the board?
I think I've done a lot in terms of talking about managing mental health, stress, and burnout in cybersecurity, all of which is really prevalent, and we are losing some really good people, I think, to stress and burnout. I think, again, I would look at it from the point of view of there's no sort of one size fits all, but I think just acknowledging the signs, or looking for the signs that people could be impacted by it, especially if they're sort of disengaging a bit, or they're not sociable, or they're not just their usual selves,
Is that
or
a
so on.
trigger or a sign that they're not that
It,
they're recoiling? Is that, would you say, like, as obviously I manage a team, what would you say is the
yeah.
best things for me to look out for?
It could potentially be. I mean, I know for myself, if I'm getting very overwhelmed or I'm heading to that sort of stage, I try to sort of duck out of calls, or I try not to be as I'm not as again, and that's when I know, hang on, I'm starting to get a little bit, I need some time out, or I need that space, or things like that.
I'm
And I'm really open with everyone I work with on
yeah,
that front.
but I'm normally sick.
So
I'm normally ill for like 3 days. It's normally
yeah,
like I start recoiling, and then in the evenings I can't really move, and then normally I'll get hit by some horrific cold. Like my body will default take me
yeah,
out for 3 days, and then I'm back to it. But yeah, I think I don't, yeah, I get what you mean. Like the energy of being able to give to
yeah.
people becomes less, and you do want to do less meetings or get other people to pick up some of the tasks for you because you're like, oh, I can't handle that today. And I get that.
And I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia in April 2022.
Ah,
So I always know when I'm heading for a fibromyalgia flare up because
I feel like
it's
you're my twin sister. So are we in my family, female women, we have fibromyalgia. So my grandma, my aunt has it really bad. And my mum has it, but she copes with it. And last year I started looking into my health and my diet and stuff because it was flaring up a lot in my shoulders and in my hands and wrists. And a lot can be triggered due to your mental health, your diet, exercising, and stuff
yeah,
like that. So, interesting that you have that too. Oh,
absolutely right. But
great.
mine is the result of a lifetime of bullying and abuse that I've been subjected to in every single area. So, as far back as even before I started school, from certain family members, right
Wow.
up to when I walked through the school gates. Naively, I got to 16 years old and I thought, I can't wait to leave this school because that's it. The bullying will be started. Oh no, it was far worse in college. It's been incredible in various workplaces. I have literally left workplaces over the years where I've been subjected to it. And as recently, I left an organisation in May 2022. And it's an organisation that's government backed and should know better because I was subjected to a lot of significant bullying, abuse, and gender pay gap there as well.
Yeah.
When I found out, because I'd been offered a head of role there, and I was told that it came with a 5K salary increase. But in real terms, it was only a 1K salary increase because at the time I really believed in the organisation. So I'd taken a slight drop to go there. So I'm like, in real terms, it's 1K, that's nothing.
Mm.
I then found out that a male counterpart had also been offered a head of equivalent level role at 15,000 more than me. So I left.
Wow.
So it does happen. It really does still happen.
Are you saying that your like the child and the experiences have escalated your fibromyalgia? Or that's
I'd I would say yes, I would say so. It's not just the experiences; it's the bullying and abuse throughout my lifetime. But
mm,
I also had a huge trauma that I went through in 2013 because my only son was stillborn, and I didn't have any before him, and I didn't have go on to have any after him as well. So that impacted me and still does,
completely
massively.
took me from sideways. I didn't expect you to say that. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, sorry. I'm very lucky I have two very healthy children. I can't imagine going through that. Sorry.
So all of that is just it's really impacted in terms of developing fibromyalgia.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really looked much into it. I just know that the females in my line have got it, and just with like, oh yeah, I've seen how it's impacted family members, and I just was like didn't want, and from like late 30s, 40s going into menopause, it got much worse. So
Yeah,
obviously, in where I'm going in my age life, I was like, that's not really like my kids are important, like my career is important. I want to be doing that for as long as possible. So I just started looking into it, but I hadn't realized like how the other traumas and stuff like that could escalate or impact it. So
yeah,
this podcast teaches you a lot.
yeah.
The things that
There's a
happen.
there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score that I highly recommend that goes into the significant link between traumatic events and the development of physical conditions such as fibromyalgia and autoimmune illnesses as well. A lot of autoimmune illnesses like fibromyalgia can also be linked to significant trauma. So definitely The Body Keeps the Score. It's a really good book.
I will definitely get that and read that. The last kind of topic that I wanted to go with you before I start crying and getting emotional was the imposter syndrome. And I feel like we all suffer from it, whether us women are more open about talking about it, I don't know, but I do think everyone suffers from it. What's your understanding of it? And what's your training mechanisms for combating this? Because I also think I've read some interesting stats about how women will only apply for a job that they're 90% qualified for, men are 60%, whether that's factually perfect anymore. I'm not sure, but is that a bit of an imposter syndrome thing? Is that us holding our own way back? Like, what do you think of your yeah, what is your thoughts on that?
So I can talk about from my own experience. Everything I've ever done throughout my lifetime has always been met with this thing in my head of this wasn't meant for me. I'm not good enough, for this. I shouldn't go for that role. I'm not good enough. I shouldn't do that. I'm not good enough. And if I do, I remember even as far back as I remember when I first started working with Chris Tarrant, in the back of my mind all the time was I shouldn't be here doing this. I'm a complete fraud and I'm going to get found out at any second. And that's how it manifests itself with me. And you mentioned about the not applying for things. That was exactly me. If I didn't hit all the criteria straight away, I just think, forget it. I'm not even going to bother going for it, even though I knew I could do it hands down.
Mm.
So that's certainly how imposter syndrome manifested itself with me. And what was really interesting for me is when I started delving into it and I realized that it actually had a name, that it was a real phenomenon, and I wasn't just, going crazy thinking about it. I started to do a lot of research into it and came across a lot of high profile people that also said they suffer from imposter syndrome. People like the poet Maya Angelou, for example. Even Barack Obama's been on record as saying he suffers from imposter syndrome. But the biggest one for me is I'm a huge fan of the rock band Queen and Freddie Mercury before
Yeah.
he died. Just love Freddie to this day. And I remember reading about Freddie and thinking, gosh, he had it as well. And the story would go that he would, before every single live concert that Queen did, he would often be so nervous. He would be physically sick before a gig, before he would go out on stage, and then he would go out. He'd do the most amazing performances, and then he would come off stage and go to the rest of the band. Was I all right, darlings? Do you think that they liked me? And I'm just thinking, but this is the guy that had a million people in the palm of his hand in that iconic Live Aid
Mm.
performance back in 1985. So I thought, gosh, if somebody like Freddie Mercury can do it, like you say, I think we all can suffer from it to some degree. So um, I see a lot about, conquering imposter syndrome and so on, but I actually prefer to say you can learn to manage it, because I think it's something that never goes away. I don't think it's something you can fully ever, say as gone. But I think I prefer to come at it from sort of managing it. So, for me, I love doing crafting and bullet journaling and things like that. So I have a success journal and I write down everything that I do, and all the little things and so on. And some days, Kelly, that could be, my success could be I got out of bed today,
Mm.
and and I will write that down. Today I got out of bed. And some days, I'll like that I just have to really sort of, push myself to get up, get going, and get started, and so on. But I note down all those little successes, no matter how small. And the biggest amount of imposter syndrome that I had was when I received a letter telling me that I'd been awarded an MBE for services to
I was going to say
scientific.
you've subtly gone over that, but you have an MBE.
Yeah,
That's kind
yeah,
of
because I really feel even now that it wasn't meant for me, that the honours committee got it wrong, that it was meant for somebody else, and so on. So, yeah, I'm not very good at sort of saying about it, and I try to just not, yeah, but it's true. I have an MBE. And even when I was in front of the king and the king sort of put it on and had a little chat with him, was like, this wasn't meant for me. This wasn't meant for me. This was meant for somebody else. So yeah, that's how deep seated it is.
I can't even imagine reading that letter through. It's been phenomenal. I think for my coping mechanism for it, I mean, I journal. That's a thing that I do too. But is that it's kind of reassuring that everyone has it.
Yeah,
Like, it doesn't matter to what peak they get to. They've all got it. Everyone's winging it. I mean, no one really knows. Like, everyone's journey is totally different. Like I've spoken to recent people, trying to get to know more people like CMOs and myself and in my position so I can learn off them and stuff like that. And what's been really reassuring was when you meet them, all of them are the same and battling the same problems and things that you think you're good at, they're worried that they're not, and vice versa, and you're kind of all on that same journey. And what are you benchmarking yourself against? It's just yourself, isn't it? So I
Yeah.
just and I think, I don't know if this is a maturity thing or as you get older, I don't know if there's, I feel like going into my 30s and my 40s that I know myself far more than I did in my
Yeah.
20s. And the things that I worried about then that I couldn't achieve, it's just like, well, now, like, would 20-year-old self now be like thinking she's a director of her own company and running a podcast and in a cybersecurity, like, she would have been like, absolutely not. But I think you get in your own way, but I think if you realize that everyone else has got imposter syndrome, not everyone knows the answers. Even the people that have done it before you don't always know the answers, because the landscape's always changing. Right, like the best CMOs from 20 years ago would be in a different environment than I am in today. Right, it's just their journey, and that kind of takes the pressure off me a little bit when I'm like, it's kind of like when they say that if you're acting on stage, you should imagine everyone's naked because we're all the
Yeah.
same. It's kind of that. It kind of levels the playing field for me a little bit.
Absolutely. And I've also done a lot of research and found that those that are neurodivergent are more likely to suffer from imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I've heard that too, that we beat ourselves up way more in
Yeah.
the FOMO thing. Because I also stopped drinking a year ago, because I realized how much that escalated. I mean, I'm like, even if it's just like a couple of glasses of, wine or something at dinner, the next morning or that evening, I'd be like beating myself up of everything I said. Did I overtalk? Did I say the wrong thing? Did I irritate someone? Not that they're not drinking helped. The brain still talks like that all the time. But again, like, when you get diagnosed and go through all these steps of what you do, it was a bit like a, eureka moment of like, okay, other people do it too. It's not just my crazy chimp in my head.
Another little correlation I found in the research that I did was around increased levels of imposter syndrome
Mm.
if you've been subjected to narcissistic abuse. And I've done a lot of research into narcissism and narcissistic personality types, not just in the workplace, but in other areas of life as well, and how that personality type impacts on other people. And interestingly, I get asked by a lot of people of how can you deal with that type of personality in the workplace and so on. And the only advice that I can give is is do your absolute best to find another job and get out as soon as possible, because narcissists do not change. They just they just don't. Even if they say that they do, they might be able to mask it for a little bit, but then they'll go back to their true selves. And also, when I look now at all those that bullied and abused me, I can see hands down the red flags that they had narcissistic personality traits or even the full blown narcissistic personality disorder.
How do you identify that though when you're interviewing for a
Yeah.
job?
So I look at the person, and if it's all about them and they're not really asking you a lot of questions about you or taking a real interest in you, or they're talking about the company or about them, or it's always what I call that sort of me, or you're talking to somebody and you'll say something that's happened to you, and they've had it, but they've had it far worse than you or that you ever imagine. So never mind about you, but this is what happened to me, and it's always a big drama or a lot worse or so on. And I can spot that now, sort of hands down, whereas I couldn't before.
Yeah. No, I definitely can relate to the bigger. We there's a few jokes of people that I've met, but like my classic one is like, if you've been like horse riding, they've rode on a unicorn.
Yeah,
It's like kind of
yeah,
like, okay,
exactly that.
I
Yeah,
got you. Oh yeah, yeah. I've been to Tenerife. Well, I've been on a Tenerife. Oh, okay, cool. Got you for that holiday. Yeah, no, I get it. No, and that's, I guess, wrapping up the conversation about talent and training, and it's having the right place, the right environment, the right people. And if you are interviewing or looking into going into a new sector, I think cybersecurity is a fantastic sector for
absolutely.
neurodiversity, gender making decisions. Ignore the padlocks, like that's just purely done
Mm.
badly by marketing. It is a warm, there are incredible people like this connection here, right, through LinkedIn, and having a wonderful conversation with you. Like, it's there, and people are there, and it's a great place to be you and have your quirks and bring that to life in a problem solving environment. And that's why we're doing these podcasts, to encourage as many people to join the cybersecurity industry. But what you're saying with that of being in the right environment, I think it's very intelligent. Of like, when you're doing an interview, it's two-way, isn't it? It's not just them interviewing
Yeah,
you. You have to interview them, of whether that's
absolutely. Yeah. And I've gone into things in the past totally ignoring those, red flags and so on. And as I said, as recently as 2021, 2022, but now I won't do that again. I will always look and sort of go, yeah, if that doesn't sit right, or that doesn't feel right, or yeah, I'll give it a wide berth.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Lisa, it's been an hour. I think I could probably talk to you for far longer, but you are getting a new car today, so
Yeah.
might turn up any minute. Lisa, if you were to encourage anyone to join the cybersecurity, just to end the podcast, why would you suggest joining our industry?
I just think the sheer variety of everything that goes on, and everyone is supportive. I mean, like in every industry, you are going to get those that are bullies and so on. I've come across a few of them, but overall, it's really not like that. And I would really encourage anybody to consider cybersecurity as a career choice. You'll get to do a lot of really cool things and meet a lot of great people, and it's a really nice, welcoming, and open community.
Oh, well, I don't think there's many episodes that I cry on, but that definitely caught me off guard today. Lisa, thank you so much for taking the time, being so open, honest, transparent, vulnerable with me. It was really lovely, and thank you for giving your insights, and that this industry isn't all about padlocks, and that is so true. Great recommendations of some books. I think there's some things that I definitely need to look into, so thank you so much for that. For anyone that wants to connect with Lisa, please do on LinkedIn. She runs a lot of training courses and things like that as you can see, she is fantastic in her field. What a great way to connect with someone and learn more about someone, and there's just another reason why I love this industry, and it's open to so many different personalities and backgrounds, and what a great place for us to solve a big problem, but with some incredible people. It's just a great network. So do feel like I'm finding my tribe on this place. How amazing. So again, thank you so much for joining me. I do hope you can listen to more episodes of the Core podcast, and please do let me know, give your feedback. Who would you like to join? Daniel looks after the podcast. Please connect with him. He would love to have you, and I'm really pushing for going on a road trip. So if you want to come and visit us, or we want to come and visit you, why don't you just pop in the messages, connect with us on our page on the website, or please direct message me on LinkedIn. Once again, thank you for joining us on the Core podcast, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.